Welcome to Per My Last Email. We are so glad to have you here. I'm Kyle.
I'm Kaila.
And today we're talking corporate astrology. Are you fans of astrology? Are you a fan of big corporations? We're combining the two.
Huge.
We're going to be talking about personality tests, and I'm very excited for this episode because it's something that you've done before. If you've worked in corporate America, someone has made you take a personality test along the way, and we're going to break down what these mean, if you should actually use them, how to use them appropriately, and most importantly, we're going to figure out what Kaila's scores are in all of them.
Yeah, we're going to break down what I am. You guys are going to be able to judge me. I'm very excited about it. I am a 6-wing 7 Taurus ENTJ.
So wow. That says a lot.
What does that say about me, guys?
That says a lot.
Let me know.
Let's start with the Myers-Briggs.
Yes.
Because this is
the classic one.
This is the big kahuna of the personality test worlds. More than 50 million people have taken this test.
It's crazy.
About 2 million people additionally take it each year. And it started around the 1950s. It was actually a mother-daughter combination. Isabel Myers and Catherine Briggs. That's how you get the Myers-Briggs.
Yep.
And they were inspired by Carl Jung.
I think it's
Jung. It's got that J-U-N-G, and you're like, I'm not sure how to rock this pronunciation. Sure. And they were really inspired by his work, but they felt like it was hard to understand it. So they wanted to make a simplified version of it. That's where we landed on the Myers-Briggs.
Yeah, and my favorite fact about this, which made me laugh quite hard when I read it, is that neither of them have any training in psychology, psychiatry, or testing.
Or training at all.
They don't know how to test, and they don't know how psychology works.
Yes.
That being said, clearly it's stuck because it's one of the I'm pretty sure that you know what you are.
Yes.
Whether or not you've taken the test recently or 10 years ago.
Yeah, and the thing is, people love taking the test and like figuring out who they are. Like every person I know has spent at least an hour going down a Wikipedia rabbit hole.
Of course.
Once they find out their Myers-Briggs, they're like, oh my gosh, who else is mine? Oh, I am William Shakespeare. I knew it. Like me and Willie are so similar. And so there is this like gratification element of this and this like feeling like you've been perceived, feeling like you've seen, that feels so good.
Yeah.
But most scientific studies have shown that this is not predictive of anything.
Yeah.
So you should be careful when you're using this, particularly in the workplace. What are you?
So I think this is really important. We're going to talk through some of the three big like tests.
Yeah.
For us, and then also the implications in the workplace.
Yes.
I am an ENTJ.
That makes so much sense. You are so judgy.
I am. Yeah. So ENTJ stands for extrovert, which we knew. Intuiting versus sensing. Thinking over feeling. And judging over perceiving.
Yeah.
What are you?
I am an INFP, so we're
almost complete opposite.
Except for the N.
Yeah.
Well, we have that N in common, though. That really bonds us together. I'm an INFP. And what's interesting and what's very useful to know about these tests is they are on a spectrum. And when they do meta-analysis of where people land, most people are in the middle. So yes, I'm an I, but I'm like 60% I, 40% E.
Right.
So the E doesn't show up, but it's basically I'm right down the middle.
Right.
And so you can sense that there's like, oh my gosh, Kaila's an E and Kyle's an I. There was such a big difference between us. There might be 5 percentage points.
Right.
We might actually be very close in that dimension. And that's one of the criticisms of this test is it takes a very complex thing where you are in the scale of introversion, extroversion and simplifies it down to one letter. And then you kind of like identify fully as an introvert when most of us are, ambiverts. We're somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. And I think you can kind of apply that to all 4 of these sections, right? Like to say that I'm a thinker and you're a feeler is like weird and wrong. Like it just like, I guess once
you're a cold, hard logician and I care too much.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, actually that sounds pretty good. I think actually that tracks.
No, this test,
it's legit. We've figured it out. But I think like what you're right, you're spot on, which is how close you are to the middle is not taken into account.
Yep.
So for example, like if I might be super far on the judging side and you might be super close to judging on the perceiving side. So we have a lot in common, but we're have completely different things.
Yep.
You might be closer to J than I am to F.
Yeah.
Or to P. I don't know. Now I'm getting confused.
You can look up what the specific dimensions mean
Yeah.
because they are a little confusing too.
Yeah.
Like we've looked them up like 100 times and I still kind of forget.
Yeah.
Which is probably another issue with the test is like it's not clear what the differences are necessarily between each category.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's like, okay, well, if now I'm saying I'm an ENTJ, just, me and a different Willie, Bill Gates,
Ooh.
we're the
nice.
same. So does that mean that I'm destined to, start a big tech company? Probably
Yeah.
not. Does that mean that I have to act in a way that is congruent with the ENTJ lifestyle, which technically is the commander, lol. Like, I'm not a commander. Does that and if I don't technically agree with something, does that mean oh, well, Myers-Briggs said it is true. So
Yep.
that's who I am, I guess.
Yep.
I think that's the issue with these tests at work.
Yeah, exactly. That's the fear is it's like an amplification of a tendency that might be 60-40, but then you hear, oh, I'm an introvert. And now you start internalizing that and you become maybe more introverted, more reserved than you naturally are. And you're not going to have success if you're acting against your kind of natural tendencies. And so I think the Myers-Briggs is very fun. I love doing it. I've gotten joy out of doing it. I think from a workplace dynamic, very important to note, this is not scientifically backed. You mentioned the people that invented it didn't know anything about tests or training or science. So be very careful with it. And I would never use this as a tool to hire, fire, promote in any way, shape, or form.
That's the issue,
Yeah.
right? Is that we're talking not just about, a personality test is fantastic when you're like, ooh, what should I eat for dinner tonight? Let's go to BuzzFeed and figure it out. But when I'm choosing who to hire and who to promote based on a personality test that is not rooted in science, that makes me really nervous.
Yeah.
There's
It's
so
all
much that
it's
can
all
go
fun
wrong
and
there.
games until there's a consequence.
Yeah.
And if there's going to be consequences, they should be based in
Reality.
reality.
Yeah.
Exactly, not some test from the 1950s. So that is the main personality test that exists in America. Tons of corporations use it. Let's move to another personality test that people are probably familiar with. It's called the CliftonStrengths Finder.
And I was not familiar with this before we started studying for this.
Okay, so this is really corporate astrology.
Yeah.
This is like the Myers-Briggs idea of identifying who you are, but let's make it super corporate coded.
Right.
Let's put this into the workplace. So 90% of Fortune 500 companies use CliftonStrengths Finder. It's owned by Gallup, and there is a little more science behind this. And what I want to call out for the CliftonStrengths Finder, which I actually love, it's more focused not on what your personality is, but what your strengths are.
Yeah.
And you'll get a list if you do the full one, I think of 34 strengths, but people are really focused on their top 5. And the founder of this test, his name is Don Clifton. He was the grandfather of positive psychology, or was called that by the American Psychological Association, because the idea of this was so much of psychology was built on what's wrong with people. And he wanted to focus on, no, that's important, but what's also right with people? What are your strengths? So he developed this test to identify your strengths. And his whole philosophy was you're gonna go so much farther in the workplace and in your career if you double down on your strengths, you know what they are, and you lean into those rather than fixate on your weaknesses. So I think this test actually came from a really good place. I know I have mine. I think you did yours as well.
I did. So
do we do the big reveal?
let's do the big reveal. We have not seen these for each other. We're going to react in real time. But again, these don't really matter, so let's not worry about them too much. But
Kayla's embarrassed by hers.
we could start with mine. Let's see what that is. All right. You can see, so there's basically 4 different buckets: executing, relationship building, influencing, and strategic thinking. Those are the traits, the 34 traits, and my top 5 are all in influencing.
That's actually wild.
It's kind of crazy because I would not consider
You
myself
are a sneaky suspect.
what I don't know. So this is very shocking to me. And I just took this week, so it is pretty it's pretty recent.
Yep.
If you're watching, you can see it pulled up. If not, I will break it down. My top 5 strengths are communication, activator. It's very annoying to me that these are not all parallel verbs, but whatever. communication, activator, woo, significance, and competition. So some of the ones that were a little bit confusing to me, activator. I can make things happen by turning thoughts into action. I want to do things now rather than simply talk about them.
You got the activation energy.
I guess.
Necessary.
But I don't know that whatever. And why is that influencing? Anyways, I love to win people over. I do agree with that.
Yeah.
I want to make a big impact. I agree with that as well. And I like to measure my progress against the performance of others. I am competitive. Do you agree with this? What do you think?
I definitely agree with it. And I think it's interesting for you that all of them fell in an influencing bucket.
It's just confusing.
And again, to talk about the broader point of what Clifton is about, it's not saying you don't have anything else.
Right.
It's just saying that's what you're naturally very talented at. And so finding a role or finding a situation where you can leverage those strengths, they're really valued in that context, is going to put you in a great place to succeed.
Yeah.
And so again, it is about positive psychology.
Yeah. So podcast host.
Yeah, communication,
Seems to
woo,
work.
competition.
I'm wooing you. Yeah.
We have to destroy our competitor
Yes,
podcast.
exactly.
Let's pull up mine because you haven't not seen these yet.
I'm
so
very excited.
my big five, we'll pull up now. I am top 5: futuristic, input, strategic, achiever, and ideation. And what I think is interesting is mine mainly fall, 4 of the 5 fall in the strategic thinking bucket.
Yeah.
And achiever falls in relationship building, but that's just about having that dog in you.
Yeah.
Getting things done. So you have this like influencing sphere, and I have this like strategic thinking sphere. And that's why when you combine us, I mean, it's like LeBron and D-Wade out here. It's Jordan and Scottie Pippen.
It's so true. Which one of us is Jordan?
Well, we'll let you be Jordan because I know you're highly competitive.
It's true. Wait.
So on mine, does that make sense to you?
I think it does make sense. I think I've always viewed you as a very strategic thinker, and I've always been very impressed by how you tackle problems, like with a lot of like discipline and efficiency. And you're like, let's break this down into its parts and like tackle all of them. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And relationship building, to me, I'm almost surprised that it's not higher.
Yeah.
I think that that's something that you're very good at.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting too. They say your top 5 are obviously your top 5, but it's about your top 10 that you can leverage as strengths.
I see.
And so when you get the full result, it's like, it says like strengthen your strengths, which just means lean into them. And then it says navigate your weaknesses. And I actually really like that framing. So many people are like, you got to fix your weaknesses. No one, Chuck, my former boss, had this really great quote. He's like, no one changes the world by becoming okay at something they were bad at. They change the world by going from something they're great at to like best in the world at. And I think that's what Clifton Strengths Finder is all about. It's like, figure out how to navigate around your weaknesses, but every second you spend trying to fix them is a second you should be spending on a natural strength and taking it making it even better. So I personally really like this test. What are your thoughts of using this test in the workplace? Yeah,
again, I mean, like, I think that as long as they're used appropriately, it's fine. And I do like this one. I do like the positive nature of it. I think, I even wrote down here, like, I really like how this focuses on your strengths and what you do right versus what you do wrong. Because I think it's almost like, don't think about a blue elephant, and now all I can see is like Babar or whatever.
No, I actually stopped thinking about one when you told me to.
You had it in your brain and then you stopped.
I deleted it, yeah.
But I think it's one of those things where if you constantly are focusing on what's wrong and what your weaknesses are, then that word almost becomes like a bigger and bigger word in your little word cloud of like things you're thinking about. And you can really focus on that too much versus prioritizing your strengths. I really like that. I do think this makes a little bit more sense than being like, I'm an ENTJ.
Yeah.
And it has more nuance, which I appreciate.
Yep.
Now, I did not pay for the full 34, so I didn't see what the rest of mine were. So TBD, we'll have a part 2 where we talk about that one.
So I have 2 comments. You mentioned you didn't pay. We should make clear that this is about a $2 billion industry.
Yes, it is.
Personality test for work. And so anything that someone is charging you for, right, there's a business model behind it. And their business would be to have you take the test again or get other people to take the test. And so it's always important to know when you are paying for something, like there isn't just an incentive to make this the most accurate test.
Yeah.
Which is why I think Myers-Briggs does so well. They kind of shy away from telling you any bad things. You read it, it's all you're like, oh yeah, tell me more. I am so great, Myers-Briggs. Like you want to take it again. You want to tell your friends because they're not telling you any hard truths because it would hurt their business model. The second thing about Clifton is at my previous job, I had someone that was like trained by Gallup. Again, this is also part of their business model. They train you on how to talk about these, and you can actually then like lead workshops on it. I found the workshop we did, all of us on our team took this test, and then we talked about it with our team together. And there was questions like, you get the best of me, win. You get the worst of me, win. I show up best for, and there's all these questions. And what I think is really powerful about the test is not necessarily their accuracy, not necessarily their predictive ability, but they give you a framework to talk about things with your team that are very important. How you like to communicate, how you like to collaborate, how you view success, if you're a perfectionist or if you're a figure it out on the go. Those are all really important team dynamics to discover. And it's kind of hard to have those conversations without some sort of framing. And I think Clifton and some of these other tests do a good job of that framing.
Yeah, I like that. The framing of the framing.
We went meta.
But I do think one of the articles that I was reading for this was talking about how somebody felt uncomfortable taking a test.
Yeah.
And they were told it was going to be private, and then it ended up getting blasted like across the whole team. I think it's something that's like very powerful when everyone opts in. And if everyone is like on board with being that vulnerable in the workplace, then I think it's like a complete unlock.
Yep.
What makes me nervous is when it's like you are forced to take the Clifton Strengths Finder and we're going to talk about it at length, even though you're really uncomfortable about what this reveals about you, or maybe you're more of a private person.
Yeah.
So I think that's also something to think about at work is like, first of all, these aren't 100% accurate.
They're not close to.
Right? And like viewing these as truths versus just having a discussion that people can feel like, oh, I'm contributing to this of my own will. I think is something we also should think about is like the requirement versus like the opt-in relationship.
I love that. And it was interesting. Harley Davidson, at least at one point, had everyone put this in their email signature.
Wow.
And it was like on their desk. One, an external client's going to be like, oh, you're futuristic. I actually will be doing tons of business with you now. What? They don't need to know that. But I think you're getting to this broader point, which is anytime you take something complex, breaking news, humans are quite complex, and simplify it into these are the 5 things that describe you, you've taken something very complex and simplified it to the point of almost it's too general. And then you start to typecast people. You're like, yeah, Kaila, yeah, she is a woo. Like she's trying to woo me. She doesn't actually care.
Yeah.
And you start making up these stories in your mind that could actually be detrimental to team building.
Yep.
And so using these as a starting point for a discussion to kind of uncover some of these truths you need to know about each other to be effective in a workplace, super important. Typecasting people and then like being like, oh, everything they do, I have to view it through this Clifton Strengths. That's when it starts getting a little absurd, in my opinion.
And we'll be right back after this. Okay, back to the show.
Okay, let's move on to number 3, the last one we're going to talk about.
Yep.
This is it's called the Big 5 personality test. It's probably the least well-known, and it's certainly the most scientific. So that also tells you something about these personality tests. We might just not want to know the truth. We want to feel good.
Can you describe what the Big 5 are? Yeah,
so the Big 5, you'll hear it as ocean or canoe. That's just an acronym for the Big 5 personality traits. Essentially, and do your own research because this is going to be a synopsis. This has been a tool that scientists have used a lot of when they're trying to uncover what are the common traits across all cultures, personality traits, and if we could like simplify them down to the least amount of independent traits possible, they've kind of landed on these 5.
Sure.
And the 5 are openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Ocean. And you take this test and it scores you on a spectrum on all of those. So it doesn't say like you're an introvert or an extrovert. It'll give you a score on an extroversion scale. And when you look at studies that demonstrate how predictive are these personality tests at predicting some life outcomes, by far Big 5 is the most potent. It's like a light correlation.
Yeah.
This is not entirely predictive. You can't hear someone's ocean and be like, yeah, at 55, you're going to run a Fortune 500 company.
Right.
I know that for sure. But it has some predictive power. And so it's a little more scientific than the rest of the tests. So I really like this test. You took it. Did you enjoy taking it?
No, I didn't.
All right. Well,
Not at all.
let's talk about my test and then we'll talk about yours. So I think I have a sense of why you maybe didn't like it.
Great.
So we'll put my Big Five score up on the board. Again, you're going to have a score that fits into these 5 buckets.
Yep.
And the call outs here is my highest score is openness, that O, which is openness to new experience. It basically means like, you
Flexible.
like traveling, you're flexible, you like meeting new people, you're very open to novelty and to newness.
Yep.
Shout out to travel. That's me. If we need any travel sponsors. Okay, I'm open to new experiences. Come on now. And my lowest is neuroticism, which is about half of what I am on the openness spectrum. Neuroticism, this tends to point to overthinking, anxiety. It can be tied to depression. You're super worried. Again, not a good thing, not a bad thing, something that shows up, and it can have positive effects. It can also have negative effects. That's my lowest score. The rest are all decently high. But neuroticism is my lowest.
It's quite low. And what I think is interesting, so again, we haven't seen each other's. What I think is interesting is how high you score on extroversion. Knowing that your Myers-Briggs is an I, which means introversion.
And this is what's so important and why I like Big Five. It's a score. You clearly understand it's on a spectrum. On Myers-Briggs, I'm like 60-40 introvert extrovert. I also think Myers-Briggs is more of the like standard what you think of introvert versus extrovert. Extroversion on the ocean scale is much more like if you have to be social, can you? Are you a bit gregarious? Can you form friends fast? Like, I think I score really well in those. It's just like my recharge time, I like to be alone. So I think this is a more accurate reflection of how I score on the introvert extrovert scale.
That's very interesting. And I like it. I think all of those, I'm looking at it, I'm like, yes, this makes sense to me. And I think it's an accurate representation of who you are and how you show up in the office. Do you feel like looking at your scores that there's something that's confusing to you?
I think honestly, I thought my neuroticism would be a little higher. Like I have had bouts of bad anxiety before, and that was in the past. There might have been some external factors that influenced that, but I thought I would be a little higher on neuroticism. I think in general, I have a pretty cheery, happy disposition, so that makes sense. I think no doubt openness. I was like, like I love trying new things. I'm like totally geared towards novelty, so that made a ton of sense. And I think conscientiousness, that's like kind of being like organized and like diligent. That I think is one of the things that's most predictive of like success in the workplace. Like you need to have some level of organization, and that's pretty much tied to conscientiousness. And so that didn't surprise me either. That was relatively high.
Great. This feels like a really good segue into mine because it's pretty rough.
No, all right. I have not seen this. All right, you want to describe to the audience what we're looking at?
So in order, my highest by far is neuroticism, which I scored 103. I don't know what that means, but it's high.
That's double mine.
And my lowest is conscientiousness, which, as you just described, is the best predictor of success.
This makes so much sense because Kayla's a terrible worker.
But what's also interesting to me is that my extroversion is actually lower than yours, like on a point basis. It's still quite high, to me. But what I think is really annoying about this is when you look at the breakdown of neuroticism. So my neuroticism is high, extroversion is high, and then right in the middle is openness to experience, and then my agreeableness and conscientiousness are my lowest. I think I'm pretty agreeable. I don't know. Anyways, I am a stressed out person. I get worried very quickly. But I think that the way that I took this test was more, I was like in a like frantic mindset. And I think I'm also kind of hard on myself. So when you're asking, what do you agree with? What do you disagree with? I feel like it's more of a reflection of how I view myself. And not necessarily a reflection of how I show up at work. Because I think I mean, I think I'm a pretty good worker, and
Yeah, you're very good.
I show up pretty agreeable, pretty conscientious. And actually, I mean, once you get to know me, I am pretty neurotic, but like, I don't think that you would know that immediately.
Yeah.
So I was frustrated by this, and my first thought was, if this was a requirement in an interview process, would somebody not hire me because of my big 5 scores?
Yeah.
And like, would that pressure of like knowing how I show up in these tests and knowing how that can come across, like make me change my answers or try to like fake it almost, or like try to over explain myself? And I think I would be a really great hire in any situation. Like, how would this impact that?
Yeah, that's such a great point, and I appreciate you sharing that. And it is, when I see your scores, I am surprised. Like, it doesn't map to you. And so there's so much gold in what you said. The first is, one of the critiques of all personality tests is it's self-reported.
Yeah.
So one, you might have an inaccurate perception of who you are.
Right.
But two, it can sway depending on the mood you're in. And for a test to have any sort of staying power or predictive capability, it has to stay consistent throughout time. So I bet if you took this in a month, after your wedding's over, you're less stressed out. Like, you know, like you might score very differently.
Yeah.
And then if you're scoring differently, the test isn't a predictor because you're getting different results.
Right.
And if you're going to base this on hiring decisions or firing decisions or promotion decisions, if the test changes, like that's not fair. You could be looking at a score that isn't accurate at all. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And I was very surprised about your conscientiousness because I know you to be like quite organized.
I know.
Quite diligent, quite persistent. And so, again, this underscores this idea that these tests are not perfect.
Yeah.
What I think is really beautiful about them is the exact conversation that we're having, which is like, this gives us a chance to be like, that rings true for me. That doesn't feel right. Like, let's explore that. Oh, Kaila, I actually know you to be super organized. Like, don't take this test seriously. It's those types of conversations that bring people closer together, allow people to discern preferences at work and communication styles at work. But the test is almost like just the canvas that you use then to paint the conversation on. I just don't think you should take these tests super, super seriously.
Yeah, and that's where the issue is, right? When you flatten a human experience into this test and you don't give the opportunity for reflection, that's where I get nervous. So if you're printing everyone on your team's big 5 scores and just, you know, handing them out and not doing the reflection, not having those conversations together, then people would look at me like, she's neurotic? Like, now I know. Good to know. You know?
That seems like something Michael Scott would do.
Yeah.
And anytime you're doing something that seems like Michael Scott would do, don't do it.
Yeah.
It feels like he'd be like, you're woo. You have to wear woo on your head.
No, exactly. And now everyone knows that you're kind of salesy or whatever. But I think this like leads into tactics really well because I think the number one most important thing is that nothing happens in a vacuum. And so my advice for you is to take the average of all of these and think about what that says about you. Don't take every test as 100% truth.
Yeah.
Because I think that's where you tend to think about yourself in a box. You tend to limit your opportunities or your ability for expansion and growth is when you're like, gosh, I rated really high in neuroticism. Maybe I am neurotic, like more than I thought. Maybe that's just who I am and who I should be.
Yeah.
So that's really important. What tactics do you have?
Well, before tactics, I want to share, there was, in one of the articles I was reading, we'll have to link it in the show notes, there was a doctor, a PhD candidate then who got her PhD, who worked for one of the companies that was producing tests or like running tests for a company, and then stepped away. And basically said exactly what you said. They're like, there's no way you can flatten the human experience down to 30 minutes or 10 questions.
Yeah.
And the more we think we can, the more you're causing harm in the workplace by like typecasting people. And she was basically like, never use these to hire, fire, or promote. Like that is not fair. You could use it as maybe a bit of information, but you should try to paint a whole picture, have conversations, look at the actual work being done before you use these to typecast people. So I just want to reiterate that because they're kind of fun and they're kind of like enticing and addictive in a way. Like you love finding out secrets about yourself.
Right. It's the
other
BuzzFeed
people.
Quiz phenomenon.
It literally is BuzzFeed for work. And you're just like, you're so captivated by it and they're so fun. that's fine. It's just very important to be like, you should not be making decisions that affect people's livelihood based on a 10-question questionnaire invented by people who have never done science before.
Right.
Don't do that. So I had to make that clear. I think my tactics are, tactic number one is find the test that you like the most and have a reason for liking it. I think default in the workplace, like Clifton is the best because it's not going to talk about like neuroticism, and like Ocean is more like, I think, personality outside of work. That can be a tricky conversation to navigate. Myers-Briggs just feels like not scientific at all and more like happy hour fun. I think Clifton, what I like about Clifton is, again, it's focused on strengths. So it's talking about lean into that. Oh, you are really good at that. But two, there are trainings and there's questions even in the book or online that facilitate a conversation around the traits. And I think that's the most important thing to do. The tests aren't necessary, but the conversations around how you like to communicate, what you perceive your strengths to be, how you collaborate, those are the key ingredients to a dynamic team and a really effective team. And that test creates the environment for you to have those conversations. So that's my number one tactic is I would use Clifton, but it's very important to have those conversations in some capacity at your workplace.
Yeah, I really agree with that. My final tactic is that if you really do want to use these, use them to set up systems for yourself. Use them to learn a little bit more about yourself. Oh, I really feel like I need data before I make a decision. Okay, I know that when I'm evaluating a project, collecting data is going to be an important element of that. Do not use these as like, this is going to determine my life outcomes, and I'm going to use this to decide if I should quit my job, if I should promote somebody, right? If I should change careers. Like, these are not indicative of your future. And even the best ones are only 25% likely.
Yeah, they're not super accurate.
They're not super accurate. So use them to learn more about yourself, not to determine what you do next.
Yes, and like you can always change.
Yeah.
We're flexible. Our brains are plastic. Like this isn't a death sentence if you get something that you don't like. Like it's okay.
Yeah.
One, you could take the test again.
And change your answers.
change your answers.
Yeah.
But I also think the last thing I'll say is like, don't use these to excuse behavior.
Yeah.
That's also the most annoying thing when people like do something unhinged and like mean and they're like, I'm a Taurus. What? Shut up. Like, don't do that. Like,
No.
you are in control of your actions.
Yeah.
Like, your astrological sign did not make you be mean to this person.
Right.
Like, so I think, again, when people lean in too much and they're like, that's just so INFP of me, it's like, okay, come on. Like, it's not an excuse to be mean.
Yeah.
That sounded like the end of like a
PSA.
a PBS show that's like, and remember, kids, be kind. But I also think it's good advice.
And remember, kids, be kind.
A great place to end it. Would love to know what your thoughts are on personality tests.
Yes.
And we have to know what your Myers-Briggs is because
Of course.
clearly it predicts everything. So
Send us everything.
send us an email at permylastemail@morningbrew.com. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio today. And let's roll the credits.
Let's.
Our producer is Michaela Heck.
Our technical director is Uchenna Rover.
Christy Muldoon is a Morning Brew video editor.
Our chief content officer is Devin Emery.
This show is a production of Morning Brew.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
See you all. I'm curious if you're into astrology, if it has a positive affect on your life, and if so, and it's not hurting anyone. What's the big deal?
So if you're an astrology girly,
Yeah,
call in.
shoot us an email. I'm a Pisces gang.
I'm Taurus. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, someone who knows these
do?
things, tell us if a Pisces and Taurus could do a podcast together.
They can't. No, actually, one of my.
They can't.
No.
All right. Well, you're kicked off the show.
I'm kicked off the show? No, I'm stubborn. I'm staying
No,
on.
Pisces is like water. We change, we adapt. So we can get a new co-host. You'll fall apart if you don't have the same co-host.
That's not true.
Yeah, you're too stubborn.
I'm strong-willed. I'll push through. I'll make it work.